Welcome to I The Show, the podcast where we talk about anything and everything. I'm Brady.
And I'm Katie.
And today we're going to be talking about panspermia and how we can possibly market that to the reptilian shapeshifters in the Illuminati.
On today's episode, we were going to talk about education, but we went off on an existential tangent instead.
So sit back, load your weed pipe. It's time for I Digress.
And then we'll just keep going.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I think about this stuff all the time, though, and then you don't talk about it. You keep it inside because most people that you know, one, they're wrapped up in their own thing. You don't want to burden them.
No.
Or two, do they care?
Probably not.
I mean, do they just want to be an Instagram influencer or screech about some political thing they read on Facebook? I look for them to try to ban Facebook pretty soon anyways, because I read the other day that they're like 80% of what is on there is fake news and it's shaping social opinion. And it's like, who thinks Facebook stuff is real?
A lot of people, unfortunately.
Why?
When you reach an audience, right? Mm-hmm. Like us, for example, even if only 10 people listen to this, now we all of a sudden have the ability to shape the idea of those 10 people if they choose to listen to us. You know, just the very sound waves coming out of our mouth will be processed by their brain through their ears. And that, no matter what, will change them in some sort of way.
So even though we're not actively trying to influence people's opinions, their opinions will be influenced because they took the time to listen to us.
Yes, because we were talking about earlier, everything that your brain does is reactionary, essentially.
True.
So when your brain receives a sound wave through your ears, it processes that sound wave, and then that gets stored in some neurons for memory. But then it also will be compared to other neurons and other sound waves you've heard. And just no matter what, you're going to be changing the neurological activity of somebody just by the sound wave going into their ears.
And that is why
so one way or the other, you're making a change.
Days because there's so much noise now. And when I talk about noise, I don't even mean just literal noise going in my ears. I mean constant assault of reading and people's opinions and people's behavior. It never lets up. And now because we have these devices, and I'm pointing at my phone, people, you never, if you choose to, you could never turn off.
No.
Like, you wake up, grab. You're on all day, you go to sleep, and then at night, if you've got some sort of device going, holy cow, we are like in a...
Well, this is directly related to like basically what we've been talking about for like the last half an hour.
Yeah, we kind of should
I
push
love
play.
Elon Musk's kind of vision of the future.
Okay.
Where you will have there will be like a settlement over in Mars, so just say like these space settling people.
Okay.
And their offspring will evolve to adapt to that climate and environment.
Makes sense.
So if you're living on Mars, your body's going to have to change. Your DNA is going to have to replicate in a way to adapt to that climate.
Yeah.
Or to that environment.
You'll be in a closed system.
So there will be those kind of people, and we're talking about really far into the future, okay? So you'll have these people who settled or were born in space, essentially. Martians, yeah. Possibly other planets if we look farther into the future. But for now, we'll just focus on Mars because that's kind of in the horizon. Mm-hmm. We might even see that in our lifetime. Someone's going to Mars and going to live there somehow. But you'll have the people who adapted to live in space.
Okay.
And then you'll have the essentially cyborgs who are like technologically augmented, whether it be through medical devices, because technically we're already cyborgs. With our smartphone, it's just an extension of our body. It has a slow bandwidth because we have to move our thumb to get any kind of information from it. Then it has to leave as photons, be processed as photons in our brain, whether it be words or a movie or something on your phone. There's a really big delay in bandwidth, but he sees that being fixed through some kind of an implant in your brain.
It's coming.
That the data just instantly streams into your brain and is processed as neurological activity rather than like being processed as something through sound or sight.
We won't need the device anymore. We will be the device.
Essentially, you're just writing neurological activity instead of doing it through your eyeballs. You'll be doing it through electrical signals from a piece of technology. It's a quicker way. It's a quicker dose, I guess.
That's
a quicker delivery system of the information. Essentially, it'll be the same information though. But you'll have your technologically augmented people or cyborgs. Okay. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if they started building like robot body parts. Basically, any kind of technology to just improve the human condition There will be those people. Most of them will probably be wealthy to be able to afford these things. So you'll have your people who evolved in like a space climate. You'll have your cyborgs, probably cyborgs in space. Okay. And then you all will have like your normal people. And then eventually that'll be phased out by the the designer babies, essentially.
Well, that's already happening, yeah.
Everyone's going to be able to like pick the genetics of your child. And it's not going to be perfect by any means. So you'll have your genetically augmented people, your technologically augmented people, and your space people.
Okay.
And that's kind of what our future's looking at. But I think no matter what, it implies some sort of an evolution forward from the human condition as we know it now.
Well, I feel like we're on the cusp of it right now. Anyways,
we are.
I feel like we're starting to fracture into these different factions. Like,
yeah. Well, with the cyborg guy you were talking about, it's a perfect example.
The guy with the same disease that Stephen Hawking had, where your muscles waste. And so he basically is going to become a prisoner in his own body and die. That was his future. So he donated himself. He's experimenting on himself of becoming the first cyborg. I can't remember his name, but we'll link it. It was just a fascinating story because, a lot of people, the first impulse, especially in our country, is just, if it's something you don't understand or it's something new, let's just degrade it, or it's stupid, and I hate that so much. It's like, this guy's willing to, hey, I'm going to die, and instead of just accepting his fate, he's a physicist. He's like, nah, I'm going to become the world's first cyborg, and we're going to advance this. He's still going to die, but he's already alive longer because of these augmentations than they said he was going to be. He's 2 months over the due date.
Yeah.
Of death. And we're all going to die. So that's kind of a thing.
Essentially,
sorry, that was just fascinating.
Well, no, that's okay, because that just proves that we're kind of on this cusp of, I guess, forcing evolution forward, because biological evolution just takes a long time. Well, it's just how the nature of it. And I'm sure we've evolved as we currently are from as we were in like the 14th century. Just no matter what, there's some sort of minute evolution of our DNA.
Oh, I know we can take more radiation than we look at the amount of radiation that we are subjecting ourselves to via electronics alone. I bet on some subatomic level things have shifted.
Yeah, and that's, I think, something people fail to also remember is there's this entire world that we can't even see, where just the smallest of things change, and it has such a big impact. So basically, the butterfly effect. But we're not talking about like in the fourth dimension of time. We're just talking about like
subatomic,
one subatomic particle changes, and that could have drastic effects over time.
We can't linearly see it because it takes a lot of, and that's just it. Everything takes a lot of time to us, but it's really not a lot of time when you think about it in the scope of existence.
Yeah, exactly. Well, does time really even exist? That's the real question. Is everything just existing all at once, and we're just somehow trapped on like a ski lift, essentially, but instead of like a wire that lifts a chair up a mountain, it's this wire of time in the fourth dimension, and we're just this chair kind of moving along it forward.
I hate being bound to our concept of time. If anybody can figure out how to jump off the ski lift, I will volunteer as tribute, because I keep thinking about how limiting it is.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, you're bound to this linear progression through your life that we've all accepted as truth, and it's like, well, all of a sudden you're getting older and more tired, but in reality you might not be. It's just because of what you're observing.
Well, time is so flexible too, because it's quote unquote relative, right?
Exactly.
Time is relative, essentially. But what does that really mean? Well, it's been proven. I don't know how proven this is. It is science, so it's very kind of
science.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's malleable, okay, at best. But so like these little gnats they were studying, their perception of time is much different than ours.
Makes total sense.
So when because it's relative, to us time moves one way, to that gnat we're moving very slowly.
So an insect that has like a 3-day lifespan.
Yeah.
Well, wasn't like that kid's movie Epic? Remember? The littler things moved faster because their lifespan was more abbreviated, where we were like these big slow-mo creatures.
Yeah, and so they've done a lot of studies on that kind of thing because time is so relative. And then you have like the guys on the space station who are orbiting the Earth, their perception of time is slightly different. I mean, it's almost imperceptible because we're talking like milliseconds.
Okay.
But to the point where their DNA ages slightly slower. They've already,
That's fascinating.
I guess they're stating that as a fact currently.
I would
that
like to...
people who are orbiting planets are, they're aging slower, apparently. I can try to find the article and link it in this, but there's actually a lot of articles by NASA about that phenomenon. Or like the people who went to the moon and back, they aged a lot slower while away from the planet because of gravity's effects. I don't know the science behind it. I'm not an expert anyway. I'm just kind of stating what I've heard before about this, but it came from NASA itself, these studies. So
I would love
time is so crazy. So we're perceiving time in one way, right? Maybe smaller organisms or even just subatomic particles are traveling time or the fourth dimension differently. But then you have in space itself, in the universe, back out of your perception a little bit here. Time is basically distance at that point. Distance and time go hand in hand, but we measure the distance by time instead of by miles. You can break it, you can convert it to miles and everything. It's such an astronomically large number.
It's easier to
It's not worth it, but it literally it takes light, the fastest thing that we know of, a certain amount of time to get here from another star. And that's how we measure it, is that amount of time at light speed.
Well, we have to think of it in that context, too, that the light getting here from Betelgeuse was actually light many, many, many years ago.
Yeah, so just try to wrap your head around how time affects all of that, how the fourth dimension even works when you're talking about that kind of stuff. Because, again, it can only really be talked about in relativity. Because every dimension is more or less a line, or two, or three.
And they all intersect.
But if you have just one single point, there's no dimensions to it at all. So time to even exist as the fourth dimension has to be some kind of a linear form from one point to another.
Which is just bananas when you think about it. I just would like to be alive to see what some of the space people, their adaptations to more radiation, subcellular changes are going to happen because of, it leaches the calcium out of your bones when you're up there.
Yep.
And it's so how are they going to adapt? I just would like to see it. I don't even care about being
there's
there.
There's a lot of really
fascinating to think about.
There's a lot of really cool predictions about that because they have to think about these things when planning a mission to send people to another planet.
Yeah, are they going to have to augment their body or create exoskeletons because you're not going to have any muscle function, and so your brain's going to get bigger? I mean,
probably.
What's going to happen?
I would predict at least that, or I'm sure they'll at least have some kind of exercise regimen to keep their bones dense and their muscles working.
But your body's going to have to
adapt. The astronauts on the space station have to do that.
Well, yeah, and they can only stay up there for a limited amount of time. But is that time helping change their cellular structure, their DNA,
it's
and then
amazing
their children
how fast
that they give
adapt.
birth to
Yeah.
are going to be, like the kids that live near Chernobyl.
Yeah.
Are they more adapted to bigger amounts of radiation? And did they mutate in a way that they could, have children that are even more adapted? Our bodies are fascinating.
It's fun to think about.
It really is. I want ultraviolet vision.
But essentially, the DNA of these people are going to have to adapt to those conditions no matter what. And I think it'll be almost a completely other organism. So it brings up the thought experiment of aliens. If there were aliens on another planet, any kind of life on other planets, it would have to be adapt to that particular gravitational pull of that planet that they're on, the particular amount of sunlight that they're getting from wherever planet they're on, the particular amount of oxygen or whatever they breathe. If they breathe ammonia, they have to have some sort of an organ to process that ammonia.
I just thought of the movie Evolution when those things were being born. Mm-hmm. I remember when the little dinosaurs, the first few ones that came out, they died because they couldn't handle it, but then eventually one did come out. Yeah. That can handle it. And I just also thought about something, how Homo sapiens is the brand of human that we are, but there was a lot of other brands, and that one became dominant. I always think about dominancy things, because that is a big thing, so it's we're going to have these...
Survival of the fittest.
We're giving birth to different types of humans because of our technology, basically. Now, which one's going to reign supreme? I mean, because we're leaving the planet, is there going to be room for all of us, or are we going to be stupid? I feel like I'm going to take option A for stupid, Alex, because we don't seem to be able to handle ourselves very good when something new happens. It's kill the witch, you know.
Yeah,
I was just thinking about that earlier. Sorry, I didn't mean to digress so much there, but I was just all these things happened in my brain at once.
I know. I feel you.
Okay. Well,
and is that going to get any worse when we have the Neuralink implant in our brain? I don't know.
We have a whole bunch of people that won't get the Neuralink. Are they going to force them to get it?
I doubt it'll ever come to being forced to, but we'll be social pariahs at a certain point in time if you don't get any of the augmentations and you're not a biologically augmented human through the CRISPR, genetic editing.
You'll be less.
If you're just normal, as we perceive normal now.
Yeah.
in the future, that type of human will essentially be kind of a social pariah. And not only that, will be so far behind
Yeah,
the other forms of humans. Like, we're not going to be as productive or efficient at almost anything than like the cybernetically augmented humans. We're not going to be as smart or like disease resistance and all this other stuff than like the genetically edited people.
So basically, humanity as we know it now is going to die off.
Essentially, yeah. I don't think it's going to be the same at all. And I don't even think people as we know them now will exist in, let's just say, 250 years.
Do you think we'll become like the people on Wall-E? Because that terrifies me.
Maybe. I don't know. I do love imagining dystopian futures.
Well, I read, was it a Neil Stephenson book? I think it was. It was talking about how people lived very, very long lives because of augmentation. And as they got older and their parts failed, they had exoskeletons, so to speak. So they could still function. Because your brain doesn't go away. It might degrade if it gets some sort of disease, but if you can keep it young and if you can keep it fed, your brain can go on.
Yeah.
It's the rest of your parts that degrade and die. And
that's true, yeah. Well, again, your body is just the vehicle for your brain.
Yeah, and it's that whole consciousness argument. If you can keep a husk for that consciousness going, you could technically live forever.
Well, that's where the whole transhumanist hope comes from. I want to call it hope. Because, again, I don't think it's kind of feasible necessarily to download your consciousness to
Into the cloud.
a mechanical, vehicle for that consciousness that will never age in the way that humans biologically do.
But would it still be
you're
you?
just going to be a copy. You're not going to be your exact replica. You're not transferring your consciousness over. You're essentially copying it, right?
I'm going to clone grandma. It's
So
not
I
going
don't
to be
think you
grandma.
can-
It stops being grandma.
Yeah,
when
I don't think
clone
you can,
it. Yeah.
unless you physically remove your biological brain and put that in another vessel.
Do you think people...
And even then, like, let's just say, let's make a hypothetical here, okay?
I like hypotheticals.
Hypothetically, you're able to remove your brain from your biological vessel
Okay.
and put it in some kind of a technological vessel, okay?
Okay.
So, all of a sudden, the form of input is now digital.
It completely
So your
changes.
sight, your hearing, the way if there's any kind of a nervous system for feeling, anything like that, how does that change us consciously? How does that change us emotionally when those inputs are changed from a biological device to a mechanical
I
device?
think this is
Will it?
talking about what makes us human, though. Are you saying, think about if you can't receive input with the senses that we perceive as human now, are you still human? Or did you just become something else?
Yeah, see, that's a philosophical question, I would say.
I'm a little disturbed by that, too. I'm thinking about it. And see, there's a lot of wealthy
it's a
people
good
that have
thing to
their
think
brains
about.
on ice right now. And it's just
Yeah.
like, are they saving it for that moment? Is it still going to be them? Because once you stop... I believe you stop that process once life ceases. Even if you're frozen, it's no longer you anymore. I feel like that energy's gone. It goes somewhere else. So there might be a code there, or it might be like in that brain. I feel like the memories are still stored, maybe, and like when you write code.
Yeah.
But that code might not ever play back the same.
It
might be bugged.
Probably not. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's what you're talking about. Sorry, I'm just trying to put it in
the
my
code
own...
essentially that you're talking about
It's-
is it's all neurological within your brain.
And without that
And
spark that makes
yes,
it you, is
there's-
it still you?
Well, yes, there's electrical signals that are what the neurons kind of function
Yep.
on. Essentially, though, all of it is stored on those neurons, I guess. I don't know the exact, biology of it, I guess.
listening to
kinda-
a record
To
to
me, I
see-
don't even think even the top neurologists know exactly what happens with that electricity in your brain. They're still working on that, I think. But there's no way to transfer that digitally into computer code and still be considered human, I don't think.
Not at this point in our existence. And side note, I love it when scientists say that we still don't understand something. It makes me super excited.
Well, it also just means we're going to keep cracking at it too.
I don't think we'll ever quit cracking.
It's good to have a goal.
I love goals. But yeah, I think that at this point in our existence, there's no way to copy you and it still be you in another vessel.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's
Well, I
even
think
attainable.
I think that cloning possibly a very close replica of your consciousness might be possible. But it won't be you experiencing you anymore. It'll be your copy. You won't have any... So, okay, it creates a fork in the road, essentially, okay?
Yeah, it does.
The minute that you replicate that, there's another version of you
Kind of like when having children.
But you're not experiencing that version of you. That's creating new neurons within that either computer system or brain, let's say, if it's like a biological clone. And then there's you creating your own memories. No matter what, there's a very different perspective. Even if you're standing right next to each other the whole time, you're still not occupying the exact same space as that copy. And that's another thing. Like, even if DNA functions exactly the same from human to human, everybody has a different perspective because we're not occupying the exact same space at the exact same time as those other humans.
And you can't
because
quantify
it's physically
experience.
impossible.
You can't make every single minutia the same in that next copies. Yeah, so it can't
so
possibly be you.
You could take two humans and grow them right next to each other for the entire existence of their life. Their neurological, like, I guess, memories will be completely different because they're not occupying the exact same space at the exact time. Or one's going to have a different thought about something than the other no matter what.
No wonder we
because one is to the right and one is to the left of each other, and they're going to see different things no matter what.
Even if they're biologically identical. Well, twin studies
even if it's something small.
prove that. I mean, they're not the same person, even though they're biologically the same.
The minute that you replicate yourself, you're just basically creating a fork in the road of two different people. There's you're still experiencing you till you die, and then there's the other version that's going to be completely different. You're not going to experience both at the same time.
You're just perpetuating your biology.
Yeah.
That's all you're doing. And you might as well just have children.
And that's why transhumanism to me is pointless, at least as far as like downloading your consciousness to try to live on forever. Because you already have that. It's called creating a child.
Well, and I never thought about it in that context before, but it makes sense. As I said, if you're going to pass a bit of yourself, you can do that through progeny.
Yes.
And that's what all animals and insects and everybody that is
every
capable
form
of
of life,
reproduction. Yeah, every form of life does.
It's our only. I think that as humans, this is a hard reality to accept, but we are just vessels essentially.
And we're finite.
We are just our vessel is just the most advanced way that DNA has figured out how to keep replicating. It just requires a lot, I think, in our form. But there's other. If you look at like those single-celled organisms, it's still the same exact thing. It's just a mechanism of DNA replication. That's literally all it is. Why DNA has to replicate, I don't know. It's like a machine that's just on, and it keeps doing its job.
Carbon-based thing. Yeah. Well, and I think that's that spark. It's like if you're alive, you're wanting to perpetuate. Mm-hmm. And that's fascinating to think about because no human, I think, wants to cease existing. Even people that stop living, I think on some level, I don't know, do you think you keep going? Like, where does the energy go? There's all those existential thoughts.
Yeah, it's definitely very existential. This whole episode, I think, is going to be
It's just an existential tangent, and I'm fine with those because I think everybody at some point, unless you are really, really just not in touch with yourself, at some point in your existence, you're going to think about stuff. I think about stuff like this all the time.
Everybody does, I think, at some point.
And but then you don't want to talk about it to people unless you really are comfortable with them or you're really inebriated. Because it sort of makes you a bit of a weirdo. It's like...
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, you're all...
Well, look at Einstein.
I know. And it's not like you're trying to be arrogant or think that... Oh, I have these deep thoughts. A thought for your thought. You know, it's like, I'm not trying to, it's just, but I think that's also another thing. It's like, as a human, are people trying to constantly figure out a way around the system so that they're better than others or because they want to live forever or I'm smarter than you? What are the motivations behind wanting to live forever?
That's what I could never figure out personally. I don't want to live forever.
I don't.
The thought of floating through space, still alive for eternity, is the worst. I would rather go to hell if there was a hell.
Or being buried in a box while still alive. Yeah. Like the idea of being imprisoned and not being able to move or experience things is probably my greatest fear.
It seems very boring. I think you reach a point where it's just boring.
Well, or you're tired of
being... If you're invincible, if your consciousness cannot die, just imagine 3,000 years from now and you're still alive and how fucking bored you would be.
Well, and if you can't die, can you learn?
Right.
You're going to hit that threshold where it's like, you get very met, and I don't think we're designed for that.
No.
Probably shouldn't use the word
We're designed to live long enough to replicate our DNA as much as possible, I think.
And then once
But I don't think there's much of a purpose to it. Again, DNA is kind of like a machine that's left on. Ooh. Essentially, all we are is DNA. That's what makes up all of our cells. And each cell has its own little function and its own like DNA, and each one of those cells wants to replicate itself too.
Can we blame this on our moms? Because our power
Kind
plant,
of.
because our power plant for our cells is our mitochondrial DNA, which we inherit from our mother, and that is the whole power plant for everything in our body.
Yeah.
Mom, I promise I'm working right now. I mean, like, what?
Yeah.
Like what? And then once you replicate, is that why life, and then you raise your children. I'm almost at the end of raising my children. They're 13 and 15. And so there's a perspective change in me now.
Yeah.
There's a shift. And I've been thinking, like I said earlier, I've become more apathetic. I really just don't care. Does that happen? There's things I want to do. I'm not a boring person, but
Right.
I don't have this care that I used to. It's like, where did it go?
That's a good question.
Yeah, you're right in the middle of the beginning.
Yeah.
You're in the, yours are babies and 5. And
very young children for me.
you don't even have time to think about anything at that age.
I'm surprised we even have a podcast.
I know. Well, we can talk about diapers and...
My mental capacity is usually quite strained as it is. And then I also have to think about, what we're going to talk about on the podcast and actually have some sort of like substance to, blast into this microphone.
We never have trouble. Let's be honest.
No, we don't.
If there's one thing I know
been.
that's a constant in this universe is that you and I, if we sit in chairs, something's going to happen. Like there's going to be a talk of some sort.
That's how this episode came up. We were originally going to record a more subject-based episode.
Yep.
But then we just sat down and started talking before we ever hit record. And an hour went by like that of these deep conversations, which you guys are catching sort of the tail end of.
Yep.
And I just decided, hey, you know what? We're an hour in. We should just hit record and see how long we can go.
I digressed on our digressing.
So this episode's a little bit more freeform than normal. It's just more of just a conversation. No subject today, but I think you guys will still enjoy
anybody
it.
with friends, isn't that one of your favorite things that happens when you're together with friends, people that you enjoy, that you're comfortable with, and then you just kind of go off on a tangent, and you feel better afterwards. It's like it's like a purge. You get a mentally purge with people that aren't going to stab you if you have an opinion that's not exactly lined up, and I don't know, there's something cathartic about being able to just talk about what's floating around inside those neurons of yours.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of just what I've done my whole life. And enjoyed. And that's, again, that's kind of why the podcast was born in the first place, because I've just naturally always had this urge to have these conversations all the time with people.
And I feel like there's people out there that'll enjoy that. Well, we know there are because people have told us so, that they like this. And also, I want to talk, I am never not excited, double negative, sorry grammar teacher, to meet people that are interesting.
Yeah.
Like, I'll find some logger that lives in a camper in the middle of nowhere that gets drunk every night just as interesting as I met a CEO that runs a biotech company who's a multimillionaire. Both of those people are interesting to me because both of their experiences, I don't know, I like listening to people. I like talking with them.
It gives you a new perspective on even just the most basic of things that you talk about.
Yeah.
Because everybody has a different perspective, like I was saying.
Yeah.
So, there's just something, I don't know, humans just in general are like, there's almost like a biological function to telling our story or having conversations like this, because we have the mechanisms to do it, our mouth and our ears and the way our brain actually processes that
sensory
information.
organs.
Yeah. But we almost have this urge to spread the information around.
It's sort of like
almost like our DNA has the urge to replicate itself. We have this urge to replicate the information that we know, or our perspective of like reality.
Well, until we could do recorded media, this is how we spread ourselves too, is you talk to other humans, and then if your story was good enough, if you're a good enough orator, that story got passed down. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that's what podcasting is, music is. Now we have this huge capability to save our experiences forever. Like, think of all the things that have been said throughout history or done or told that we don't get to hear because there was no way to preserve it.
Yeah.
We don't have that problem anymore.
Not anymore. It's going to be like that forever now, with the ability to do that. This is hard to articulate the thought I have about this, but
I will listen.
It's almost like we're headed towards like a drive to be like a hive mind, some kind of singularity of consciousness in a way, or a singularity of just existing, because we all want to share our opinions and our life story and our perspective with everybody else. And social media proves also that, we want to record that, store it, have it there forever.
Yep.
books and movies and all this other stuff.
You wearing a swimsuit.
Yeah, it's almost like we're trying to tell the universe to, like, combine us into some kind of a hive mind of one single thinker, I guess.
Well,
maybe we are, and we just don't have access to the higher realm of that. I don't know.
Like that we're all connected, but we're just not quite capable of consciously realizing that yet.
Like, hypothetically, there's some kind of a God form out there, in which our consciousness is each one of our consciousnesses is just one little nerve ending to a giant, like, processing center of the information that we're experiencing. I don't know.
Is that why think about war. When enough of us reverberate those little conscious strummings, so to speak, then we do some big things. That's kind of what scares me about social media sometimes, is if you get in... Right now, everybody's sort of factioned out, but it's becoming more homogenized because I feel like this... Not that I believe in the evil empire, but I do feel like there's this subtle and not so subtle kind of growth and push towards getting us all to, like, submit to being a certain way. I'm not quantifying or speaking this outright, but it's like I can feel it coming.
I
see it.
You can just kind of feel it and see it. And
is it a control thing? Is it just hive
I don't know,
mind?
because I don't think there's one. I think it is hive mind, and it goes kind of towards what I was saying, because, like, I don't think there's one person behind it or the Illuminati.
I don't either, but you feel it. I feel it when I read, and because I do every morning. I start out and I kind of just look at the left, the right, the middle, and I gist what people are feeling.
But it's almost a natural progression towards that.
They're whipped into a frenzy worldwide right now, and it's an anxiety. Like, right now, our human species is in a very anxiety phase, because
very anxious.
It's not just one thing. It's sort of reverberating, and I don't know if it's because we can all feel each other's thoughts with the hive mind thing. With the social media has been that great connector.
Yeah,
I get very excited talking about this.
Like, what if the same exact, like, world events are happening right now, but we didn't have social media?
It'd be much slower.
Yeah. Well, I guess a good example of that was, like, 9/11.
Yeah.
I don't. Social media wasn't really a thing.
No, we just had the internet, happened. But we didn't have social media. Yeah, there was AOL Instant Messenger.
But, like, that zeitgeist still reverberated through the entire planet.
It did.
Like that one single event, kind of,
And why that event? Other things had happened, but it was that particular event, which was a horrible event. But it's like it reverberated, and everybody got on this bandwagon, and look what happened. Mm-hmm. And now
it's very interesting to think about that.
I feel like we're on the precipice, we're on the cusp of another major thing happening in human history, just based on the anxiety alone. Right now, there's so much anxiety. People's norms have been ripped out from under them, and
it's
now
like the tank is building pressure.
Yeah, and now we can communicate in a way that's instantaneous. So I see it all the time.
Global.
They'll throw out a news story, right? I just instantly don't believe it's true because it's been proven so many times a lot of but people have these reactions, and they're starting to have it in that hive mind way. There's this massive outrage, something needs to be done, and it's like it's whipping people into this weird sort of frenzy.
Yeah.
It creeps me out a little bit.
It's interesting.
Because
it is almost like do
we have a
it's almost like that? Okay, it's almost like this is really hard to articulate as well.
I know. Just
throw it out
the
there. Best image, the best way to kind of, like, create an allegory for this is, like, have you ever seen those icicle Christmas lights?
Yes.
Where there's one long stream of wire.
Yes.
And then nodes coming off of it with lights on the nodes.
Some of the nodes
I like to kind of think of this like consciousness is a big set of icicle Christmas lights, okay?
Okay.
Or even just regular Christmas lights, okay? You have a chain of wire with lights, and each one of our consciousnesses is those lights, but essentially there's still this wire.
It's still connected.
Sending the electrical signal through the whole thing. So is there, like, consciousness outside of our personal consciousness that's still connecting us all, that we just don't have access to? Well, and I've heard other big thinkers talk about this, like Joe Rogan, for example, probably talked about this a few times.
Oh, yeah.
He's never really broke it down into a easily digestible way of thinking about it, like I just tried to, but it's kind of a hard thought to digest it, and it's very philosophical in a way. But it's like, is there a consciousness stream connecting everybody's together where we just don't have access to the full bandwidth?
This brings up something, we had our cryptozoology episode, but there's something that a lot of them talk about, that the metaphysical ones, that we had a sixth sense. It's sort of an awareness sense, and then because we, so much is done for us and we don't have to survive, that flight or flight thing.
Yeah.
That sense has become dulled on a lot of us. what if that has to do with this consciousness thing? It's like an awareness of stuff beyond you, like a neural, you called it a neural link, but are we neurally linked to the rest of us? And that's why anxiety is almost groupthink at some point?
Yeah, and it also would explain a little bit of empathy, how that even functions in and of itself.
I hate how social media manipulates empathy. It drives me bananas. It's like, I think that part of being a grown-up is being able to remove yourself from a bad situation, apply logic to it, also apply empathy. You need both, or you're going to be a jerk, and then come back into it, make a decision. And we are not seeing that.
Well, that's kind of why we have therapists in a way. Not a lot of people use that, but
do we
it's
need
essentially
a therapist army
instead of pulling yourself out of the situation, thinking about it logically, and then applying that logic to it to move forward. We have a third party who's not immediately in that emotional, I guess, turmoil that you would be in, essentially. So they're able to apply that logic directly to the situation for you, and then you can choose to take that however you want.
So on telehealth, we need an on-demand therapist because it's all instantaneous now. So actually, that could be a thing that would work, is you almost do need an on-call human that you could say, hey, I'm really upset that this person just did this, and but you also have to have self-awareness enough to stop yourself. And a lot of people aren't now. They're just knee-jerk reactionary all the time.
Yeah.
Start a boycott. Cancel this.
But if they were to talk to, like, a third party not in their direct system of emotions,
that might...
that third party, again, that's why therapists exist, because they're a third party that isn't experiencing what you're experiencing, so they're able to kind of just look at it from a whole different point of view and go, okay, here's what you should do.
Most humans do not have the resources to have a therapist. Well, at least in our country.
That's true. I don't know why that's not something that we just all have access to for free.
I feel like that's something as a species. And that's another thing. I hate the idea of taking from other people and just giving away. But I think as a species, we can make decisions to be like, hey, this we all need. Mm-hmm. So let's work together or come up with a product or do something as a species. Like therapy. So many problems could be alleviated if sometimes people just had a person to talk to that was professionally trained to be like, help them, not tell them what to do.
What about an artificial intelligence?
It could even be that. But I don't know if other humans would respond to a non-human as well as you do to a human.
Well, a non-human won't be able to necessarily empathize as well as a human would.
That's back to that sixth sense thing.
You don't necessarily always need empathy
to make decisions.
To create good advice.
Like, activate human help mode. Like, what?
Yeah, I don't know how it could be done. I don't know the mechanics of how it would operate necessarily.
An on-demand therapist could be a thing, though.
The only way to do it in a way that doesn't incite socialism necessarily is kind of would be like an AI.
Well, or voluntarism.
Voluntarism works and everything, but again, you're still relying on somebody wanting to donate their time and effort.
I am an on-demand therapist to no less than 10 or 15 people, and I don't get paid, but I do it because I care. But it is also incredibly draining because the people that do therapy...
It's a lot to ask of somebody, and that's why I think we need someone non-biological to do that.
Oh my gosh, though, would it be the same? That's that sixth sense thing, though, Brady, like that... The empathy thing, the collective consciousness thing. Can an AI actually effectively... I think an AI can totally counsel people on actual black and white decisions.
Yeah,
should I buy this house? No, you're not in that financial decision.
When it comes to logic, it doesn't get much better than an AI.
I think it's better than a human.
Because that's exactly how AIs function.
Yeah.
Objective logic.
But emotions?
But yeah, when it comes down to emotions...
I like this tangent.
If you're not human, I don't think you can empathize with human emotion. It's impossible.
Well, we do
How
have
could you?
We have a non-human...
You could even program, I guess, a simulation of our emotions into some kind of an artificial intelligence, but there's no way it would be the same.
I was just thinking, you could take the most empathetic person alive, program their patterns of behavior into a simulation, and that could be an effective... I don't think a human will react as well, though. And I just thought about, we're going into this... Ooh, nice. We're going into this realm right now where we have the first AI actor that's going to act in a movie. And so, as a human, I want to watch it and see if I respond to that the same way I do. Because when humans act, there are people out there that can elicit emotion from me.
Yeah.
Through their acting, because it makes you feel about your experiences. Can an AI do that? And if an AI can do that... We'll find
out, I suppose, soon.
Then they could maybe counsel us.
With a movie, though, it's more or less just a portrayal of emotions. And I don't know, I'm confident in a way that an AI could do that. Portray humans having emotions, but there would just be no way for an AI to understand those emotions. I do have confidence that it could portray them, though.
Oh, I believe 100%.
Then you're just more like an emulation at that point.
The AI actor will probably be the greatest actor of all time.
Technically, yeah. And AI, anything will be the greatest anything of all time. That's
because
just kind of the nature
mistakes.
of AI.
But I love mistakes. That's how we learn
Mistakes are human. That's part of everything.
And I think that's our shared collectiveness, is that we all know, no matter how awesome, even the most successful of us, even Elon Musk has bad days. And he's made bad decisions. And not just him. I use him as an example because he's a current example of a very successful person. But he's had bad days, and we know at the end of the day, we've all had gastrointestinal distress together. I mean, like, so how an AI is not going to have that. They can't even empathize with that. Can an AI feel empathy? I think they can mimic it.
I think an AI can pick up on cues and understand this person is showing this emotion, but that's not like they're going to feel that emotion in the way that we feel it. You know what I mean? Then even with artificial intelligence, it's still if then because.
I know it's very.
But there's not really. I mean, there's no emotions to it because our emotions are chemical.
Okay, like
in nature, and when you're talking about analog versus digital, it's completely different worlds.
I have a perfect example of this. I've lost a ton of weight and kept it off in my life. If I counsel someone, say that I become a coach or a health person or a certified nutritionist. I have an experience that person can see me as having an authority in the sense that I have successfully done this and I can empathize with, I know what it's like to be a fat person. Mm-hmm. That is huge. I don't think a code can have that. They can say, hey, you need to do this, this, and this. And I think using AI to get advice from is genius.
Yes.
But I do
when
not think...
When it comes to objective reality, it won't get much more accurate than an AI system, but... Again, when it comes to any kind of emotional connection...
I don't think it's going to... We're not there yet.
It's not going to work.
I'm not definitively saying it cannot happen because that's arrogant, and...
There's just no way... They just don't have the mechanism. Unless you could program a consciousness and download it into an actual biological body, like let's say you have a cadaver.
Yeah.
If you could code consciousness, I don't think it's possible.
How do you do
that? But hypothetically, if you could write the code for consciousness in a way that the neurons in that cadaver's brain cells would understand, and somehow put that in those signals into the brain.
Okay. Yeah.
Maybe.
And that's a big
because again, emotion is biochemical. It requires the organs that we have to release those chemicals and the nervous system, basically dictating that. And so, it's hard to do this without disparaging what humanity is in general.
It also makes you feel a little bit of despair too.
That's what I mean. It's kind of what we are.
What makes us flawed also makes us awesome.
Yeah, but essentially we're just a bunch of chemicals. We're just a bunch of DNA.
But we're more than chemicals.
Yeah. So all of those emotions that you feel, as genuine as they are and as genuine as they feel, are just electrical signals going to an organ to release a certain chemical, in which case changes the cellular activity in your body to do something or another. You name it. There's a bunch of different functions for it.
And an AI isn't having any of that. Yeah. And I think that the variance between how we both are obviously excited about this conversation, but how we are both releasing chemicals right now is completely different. And that's what makes humanity awesome.
Exactly.
Is we are having the same experience, but how we're experiencing it is completely different.
Yes.
And that is why AI, as awesome as it is not going to get to that point anytime soon.
No. As awesome as AI is going to be,
it's amazing.
It's never going to be human.
Think of how much it's changed our lives in the last 5 years anyways.
Yeah, and those are just neural nets.
Yeah, they're not actual...
We don't technically have a real artificial intelligence as I guess you would hope for, or I guess as what was being... we don't have Skynet. We don't have anything self-aware yet necessarily.
Do you think we're ever going to have anything self-aware?
Probably not. It's just I think just the very nature of how machines work in general. Even if they were aware of themselves, what's their purpose?
Okay, but what about transhumanism? Let's go back to this. If we get so perfected in our augmentation, it'll become a new organism, and technically it could be an AI that thinks for itself. That's
true.
It might not. When does something cease being human? At what point of augmentation?
I don't think that's a question that has been answered yet either.
Oh, and I know smarter people than me are thinking about it and talking about it. There's so much going on in the world of quantum, because that's where they're thinking about these things, and. I wish I knew more about it. I get morose about it.
I love studying quantum mechanics.
Yes.
Because basically, in very lay terms, what quantum mechanics is doing is studying the smallest building blocks that we can possibly perceive using technology to figure out how things function on the most basic of levels.
Yeah, we're taking this amazing thing and we're just using it to learn how things work. Think about once we get past that point.
If you can learn how things work from the smallest of building blocks, then it's easier to see the bigger picture of why things function the way they do in reality.
And think about
And the more that we look at it, the more we realize reality is just impossible to understand.
It's only existing because we observe it right now. And that's a little bit, as far as an existential meme goes, that one is a mind blower. Because it's like, what's actually going on right now in this moment?
There are two sides of the fence to that kind of idea. That idea, though, is you had the quantum physicists that believe that the particle is a waveform until observed, and then it becomes a particle form. But now there's all these other quantum physicists on the other side of the fence saying the tool that's observing it changes it fundamentally because of the tool being part of the experiment, and it's not the observing as an action that's changing the particle. It's the tool itself being involved.
Which is more, I'm more on that camp.
I don't know which camp I'm in necessarily on that one.
How about both?
I think I'm in the agnostic part of that where it's like, I don't know.
Well,
no, so I don't think they know because they're arguing about it. That's how I know they don't know.
That's how science progresses. I think that is the least arrogant and most positive, smart answer that you could ever have is, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's very humbling to be able to say that. It's okay to not know stuff. My nephew is doing quantum chemistry, a doctorate, a PhD at WSU, and one of the most incredible and terrifying conversations I've ever had was at a restaurant in Pullman with a Russian PhD chemistry student, and he was rather inebriated, but the stuff that came out of his mouth made me feel so small. Because the stuff that they're doing, they're beaming particles at things just to see what happens. And they have had things disappear. They don't know where it went. And when I say things, I mean particles. Right now, at WSU, they're making particles disappear by doing things with them. And where do they? That is what they're trying to discover. And it's like, where do they go?
That's a good question. Well, I don't know if we'll know for a long time.
They're figuring it out. The particles come back.
They're trying to do there's like studies I heard about where they think they observed a particle existing in two places at the same time. And that would be a really interesting point of view to think about how reality, like what reality is if that is the case.
I want to take an Ant-Man trip to wherever those particles go when they send them.
Yeah.
Where is the space beyond? Like what? How is understanding that space going to help us as humans? Like what are the questions?
Does it? The other question in that same frame is like, does it matter?
That's what I mean.
If it doesn't change
is
humanity,
it just us doing our whole ape thing, poking an anthill with a stick?
I think maybe the whole very reason most of the time that we do science is to answer questions that usually are very related to being human, or that will push us forward technologically, or something.
Our quest of knowledge is self-centered.
Mostly science is done because science takes resources. To study things takes time and resources, right?
Yes.
So normally we reserve those time and resources for more or less important questions we need answered.
Which is why...
Or something to make a profit.
Which is why in
chemistry.
In alien movies, we always fight the aliens because either they're coming here to steal our stuff or we want to steal their stuff to make our lives better.
Yeah.
So we're all jerks.
But in my mind, the quantum sciences and the quantum studies are... I don't even think they're going to have much of an effect on how we perceive reality. But they're still doing them just to understand it. But is that understanding going to push us forward at all? What's it really going to do?
Well, in quantum computing it is.
Yeah.
It's pushing us forward a long way.
Yeah, I think it might be like an inverse effect, or you know what I mean?
Well, and it's just...
But I don't know.
You're getting it's the ultimate existential topic, quantum is, because do we need to know what goes on to move forward in that space? I don't know.
Maybe in one niche or another. I guess.
Well, I guess in quantum computing it's helping us because we're able to compute so much more stuff, and that actually computing power is one of the greatest things to move us forward.
Because Moore's law,
yeah,
which is roughly, I'm not a freaking computer scientist, but I sort of understand Moore's law.
We have reached capacity
on the basic level, but it's basically the computer processors become smaller and algorithmically more. They double in power and each size decrease. And there's an actual equation to it. I don't really
Is transhumanism applying that concept to us as humans?
Probably.
And
But
I know that was
basically,
weird,
we're
sorry.
going to reach a point where you just literally cannot get a processor any smaller, which inherently means it's not going to become any more powerful either. So we'd have to just apply more processors. And
So does-
it's basically, we're coming to a point where Moore's law cannot apply anymore because of physical size. You cannot get any smaller than an atom or whatever. And so what quantum computing is trying to do is move beyond Moore's law of computing.
Or into the next phase of it?
Because
yeah.
then we're going to be working on subatomic particles as computer processors.
Good Lord.
But come to find out, these particles they're experimenting on with quantum computing are immensely more powerful than any of the microprocessors we make now, and obviously way more small. So think about the amount of space 10 silicon particles takes up as opposed to even the smallest processor now.
We're just
But
moving
it's going to
the
be
next-
immensely more powerful than that small processor, just having a few silicon atoms, essentially.
And it goes back to that when growth and discovery stop, life stops. I kind of think that's how it is. It's, if we don't constantly keep moving forward, it's like that.
Well, maybe humanity won't, but
Well, that's what
DNA
I'm
will.
talking- Well, DNA will perpetuate.
Because look at a dog doesn't care about computers.
Well, I mean us, and I mean that's where we're different. I feel like we always have this desire, isn't that built into our DNA, to just constantly be moving forward? Because most humans are not happy to just exist. You know, like you just brought up a dog. The dog doesn't care. Sun comes up, sun goes down. Dog eats food. Dog poops in yard. Like they're wonderfully complex creatures too.
Mm-hmm.
But they don't have that weird innate desire to constantly challenge life.
Yeah, there's something that humans have, whether it be God-given or inane, or innate, or inane.
Sure.
Anyway,
Or,
whether God-given or otherwise,
evolved.
we seem to have this drive to always learn and challenge just the very nature of reality, I guess.
And some of
whatever
us have
reason.
more drive than others.
Is it that
It's
our
weird.
DNA, or is it that our DNA is plugged into the consciousness stream that connects us all, and it realized that we need to build technology to get off this planet and
We know what's coming.
and occupy the space of the universe that's so much more immense than just one planet?
So
I don't know.
So we're actually.
It's fun to think about. I think about it all the time. What the hell gives us this drive that other animals don't seem to have?
And we have varying levels of drive. You brought
Yeah.
up the hive mind where we're all connected type thing. And so maybe that makes more sense that some of us have more drive than others. Like each part plays their part. I know, that's a lot
And
to
again,
think
I'm
about.
not saying that we are part of a hive mind or that we...
Oh,
I'm just stating
we're
what
just
I
thinking
observe.
about things.
Because we don't have a tangible way to prove gravity. All we can do is say, here's its effects. You can measure its effects.
Heck, I don't,
It's the same thing with that. I can't prove that there's some kind of consciousness stream above ours that connects us all. But there seems to be some effects.
There are
And
observable things.
That's my hypothesis in a way, I guess, of that. Because it just kind of seems like that. I'm not sitting here trying to say that's how reality is. I'm not necessarily even putting much effort into studying it.
So you're not
But I can see small effects of that, I guess, in a way.
You've observed something,
It
so-
almost seems like I could be completely wrong, though.
Well, but you're okay with admitting you're wrong. That's like this whole conversation,
fine if I
all of
was
our
wrong.
podcasts that we have. I just want to talk about things because that's how you learn.
Yeah.
It's like I don't mind being challenged. I don't care if people call me an idiot.
I
just
actually
wanna talk
encourage
about
everyone to challenge us because that
Yeah.
gives us a way to interact with you guys on the comments.
things, which we would like to do, because coffee and commentary,
As long as you're not a complete dickhead.
there are plenty of those. Well, and that's okay. When you can, obvious trolling, if that does something for you, go somewhere else. But if you genuinely disagree with us, I would
Yeah.
love to know why. And I would talk to you, because I hate this thing going around right now where you can't be friends with people unless you're 100% like them.
Yeah.
It's like, no, I want to be friends with people and talk to people and have a community of people that challenge everything in a respectful way.
Yeah.
Or maybe even you can make fun of me. I love being made fun of.
Well, it's like you said, where it seems like there's this weird phenomenon where it's like we're all trying to be the same and homogenized.
Yeah, I don't want to be the
like
same.
homogenized consciousness in a way. That's just not human, in my opinion.
No, it brings nothing to the
There's
table.
something about being different and learning from different people
I
who have
hate
different opinions
conformity.
and different perspectives. It's almost a requirement to just be sane. to have different opinions to interact with.
I behave myself because I care about other people, not because there's arbitrary laws about it.
Exactly.
That is my thoughts on that. I don't want to cause harm to any other creature with my actions. Not because some overlord is telling me, Katie, you do this. It's like,
not because Big Papa government tells you to.
And I wish more people would realize that you are in control of a lot more than you think you are. And they don't, like, okay, with your money, if you don't like the way someone is, some store or something, you don't need to get on Twitter and start tweeting about it. Just don't shop there.
You don't need to call Papa Trump up and say you need to ban this business because they're bad.
Ban that. It's like, no.
You don't just make change with your wallet. Use your voice. You have these vocal cords in your body
and talk
that
to
are
people.
really good at projecting sound waves. And you can control those sound waves to influence other people. And if you have a legitimate point,
they'll follow
other people
you.
will go, oh, okay. That's how the free market functions.
And don't get so wrapped up in yourself.
If a business is being bad, then you know, word will get out, and then that business will fail. Okay? Because nobody wants to buy from a bad company or have a bad product when there's good products to be bought. That's how the free market functions.
But also don't be so wrapped up in yourself that you demonize something just because it has a different opinion from you. I'm so tired of that too. It's like, okay, option A, I don't like you. Okay, I'm cool. I don't need to be #1 web star. I'm going to go over here and do stuff with my people. And I might talk to some people about it. But there's this weird thing where if someone has an ideological difference than you need to wreck their entire life and dox them and all that stuff. It's like, who the heck does stuff like that? Yeah. Do you not have enough to do with your time?
I personally love interacting with people with a different ideology than me because I learn. It helps to have you have to have a different perspective to compare your own perspective to. With anything, any subject, any little tiny subject even.
And you need to be comfortable enough in yourself not to be afraid of someone else's perspective.
Let's just make a quick example. If you don't like a movie, okay? But you're talking to someone who likes that movie, I feel like it's important to have that discourse with the person as to why they like that movie. Yeah. And you tell them why you don't like the movie. And then it's just, if anything, you both come out of it knowing why other people might like that movie.
But you don't
or they'll understand why other people don't like the movie. And then guess what? Progress happens because then, you know, just collectively humans realize, okay, what's not to like, what is there to like, and things change from there and become better.
And you don't hate that person's entire existence because they don't like a movie that you like.
Yeah, how is that going to change? How is that going to help anything in the world if we don't like someone's opinion and we just don't like them at all?
Well, I see that happening in the world of
comedy. Because there's other nuance too. Because that person might not like that particular movie that you like or whatever, but what about other things in life than just movies? What if you guys share a common interest in a book?
Well, and I've traveled a lot in my life because we moved a lot, and I have found you can find something with... So far, I've not met a person that I haven't found common ground with one topic with. It's, you know, I've sometimes I'll be stuck in a ferry terminal for 20 hours. When I was a kid, I'm no joke. And there's something... One, it's just being curious, not jerk human. And sometimes you don't want to talk. I'm just saying that if you make an effort... I find this in the library all the time. I work in a public library part-time, guys, and... We have a lot of people moving here from the state that shall not be named right now, and they are so shocked when I'm nice to them. Is that a thing now? People are just not nice to people?
Probably, yeah.
I call them my refugees because they're shocked that it is different for them because life is a little slower here in North Idaho. Mm-hmm. But they're truly, genuinely, one, amazed that I'm being kind to them. And two, they're shocked that I'm not being a jerk. And it's like, have we got that far as a species where we're just demanding, we're rude to people that actually help us out, and we're so wrapped up in ourselves that our opinion is our sole identifier as a human? Like, if you don't share my opinion, you somehow invalidate my humanity? Like,
yeah.
Is that what social media has done?
A little bit, maybe. It's kind of hard to pass the entire blame on social media.
No, I'm just saying, But
it's definitely become a tool that's almost like amplified that kind of existence.
Also am not a social media hater. I love it. It connects me to people.
I think it's a great tool.
Yeah, I just don't like some of the effects.
I think it's an important tool, and it was almost inevitable to have that tool.
Yes.
Just, again, with the way that we're seeming to be kind of like heading towards a hive mind.
Ooh, the hive mind.
Social media was like the big, like, evolutionary, like...
The next leap.
It was the big leap towards that, I think.
It's
being
scary.
able to communicate and post little opinions.
And do
at any
little-
given time of the day
little
to
TikToks.
everybody on the planet at once if you want to. But like, I don't know. It's a powerful tool. We just need to learn to use it more wisely.
It's scary and awesome at the same time.
Because we can use it as a tool to make our existence better on this planet, or we can just sit here and argue about the fucking big orange meanie all day.
This is true, and I sometimes get nervous that we are rapidly hurtling into the screenplay of Idiocracy a lot when I look at... My son will come show me little TikToks, and I'm all, ooh, is that what we're doing with our time?
TikTok I have a bit of a problem with just because it seems more or less a platform for people to go, look at me, give me attention, more than any of the other social media platforms, personally.
Have you seen some
just
of the,
from my
the little
observations?
clip? Well, because it's a Vine. I mean, that was the...
Vine was a good example of that too, yeah.
And it's very, some of the stuff is hysterical, but it's all very
It's entertaining.
topical.
There's a lot of entertainment value to TikTok.
It's just kind of creepy. And
But it also plays into that... The
narcissism.
social media downfall of I need my dopamine drip, give me likes.
And it's so fast. Each new thing is faster. You know what I mean? Like 15 seconds, 30. It's
attention span. We might have covered this in one of the episodes, but
I think we talked about that.
There's so much content, media content out there, whether it be your friend's Twitter post or the new YouTube video that dropped an hour ago. Or,
it's overwhelming.
A new movie that came out. Your time is stretched so thin, and it's very limited on this planet, your time. It's a very valuable thing to have. And so now these companies have to basically compete for chunks of your attention more than anything. They're not trying to get your dollar anymore.
No,
that's
it's all
an
about,
old model.
It's all
okay,
about
that was the original .com boom. Everybody competing for your dollar. The new .com boom is... I guess it's just more like an app boom. Everything's app-based now. Mm-hmm. But it's all... They're just trying to compete for your eyeballs for chunks of time. Like 30 seconds of your eyeball attention is extremely valuable nowadays.
Because they get paid for it. Mm-hmm. It's almost like they're trying to buy you. Like you said, it's not even...
Essentially they are, yeah.
Yeah, and so it's tailored to you algorithmically as well. It's really... We have leapt, just in the last couple years, so much has changed in advertising.
Yeah.
And how things are delivered to us.
It's a completely new playground now for them.
Yeah.
And that'll also probably be evolved further anyway. But imagine we have those Neuralinks, and all of a sudden advertisements are just immediately programmed into our brains through neurological signals rather than... I
just don't know if I'd like that being
your eyeballs.
Hacked, Brady. The noise. Sometimes I'm finding myself wanting to turn off.
It scares me a little bit.
Yeah.
Because they're already trying to program you to drink Pepsi, for example. I'm just making a small example here, okay?
We're not evil empiring.
They're programming you through visual cues to want to drink Pepsi. Imagine if they could just go into your freaking brain and go, you're going to drink Pepsi. Period. They can pretty much just control your urge to want the Pepsi.
Yeah. Or they could see your vitals and know that you're feeling a little tired right now. Here's this energy drink that...
Yeah.
And it's just...
Yeah, think about how the algorithm works now. Imagine when they have more access to different types of information about you.
I find that terrifying.
They already have access to way more information than they should as advertisers to be able to tailor the ads to you. And in one sense, that's a good thing because I, as a man, don't need tampon ads. Okay.
True.
And as from an advertiser's perspective, it's a lot better to go, if I tailor this ad to these specific types of people, more of those people who are going to buy my product in the first place are going to see it. It's not wasted on people who won't. But we'll also look at it from like a nefarious point of view.
There's no more privacy.
They know everything about you and can, again, if they can see your vital signs and give you an advertisement for an energy drink, it's like almost like what's free will anymore at that point?
It's so impersonalized, though. They know
How's
everything about you, but they
function?
Don't know you. It's kind of creepy, right?
Yeah.
It's like you said, they can see your vital signs and like, oh, their blood sugar's a little high. I'm gonna do this keto bar to them because I don't know. It's just it's a little weird.
But it's not just it's at that point. Yes, they're gonna be able to do that with products. But now picture them doing that with ideologies.
Oh,
it's already bad enough with the whole voting persuasion through social media.
Right.
Yeah. Well, that's a real thing that happened.
It really does. Yeah. No.
Now these Russian social media farms, okay, they just have 1,000 people sitting in a room with a laptop and a social media account, and they're going to go through and try to sway people's ideas through memes and rants
and it
through
works.
text.
Psychological.
Imagine if they could go straight into your frickin' brain and do that.
I know, and by analyzing your biochemicals, know which way you could lean. Because I do think empathy, we have different levels of it based on our, hormonal makeup and our DNA. And so it's like some people are more predisposed to follow certain ideologies than others. You're right. Imagine if they could just biohack you.
Yeah. Imagine if they can cut through the bandwidth of having to use your thumb to scroll and see something and process your visual information into thoughts. Imagine if it just straight to thoughts. That's what scares me.
And it's being done already.
Yeah. Elon Musk has a very positive vision of this. I don't know why, because it scares the shit out of me.
Well, because I also have a very realism approach to how humans are. Most people, it's what's in it for me and what can I do to get what I want.
Yeah.
And I don't know. And if you don't have an ideology that you live by that tempers that, you are not a nice person.
Usually, yeah.
And I know it shouldn't boil down to nice or not nice, but there's been a lot done in our history by people that are just wanting to one-up people or be on top of the chain. And I don't want to... Can you imagine if they could see in your brain?
Yeah, I don't know if I like that.
We might have to wrap it up.
And not even like see in your brain, but be able to just change the neurochemistry.
That's freaking creepy,
with an electrical signal that's, going through the 5G network. It'd probably be like 10G by then.
I just think I need to live on my own island if it gets to that point. And I'm hoping I'm not alive when it comes to that, honestly. See, I have no trouble. I don't want to, die right now, but I'm just saying dying is not scary to me, the prospect of it.
It is part of life.
It is, and it's 100% fatal.
It's almost like the very destination that our journey, everybody's journey culminates to. Like, we're all on a journey, right?
I'm ready for the
Everybody's final destination is death. I don't know. Nobody freaking knows where we go after that.
But it might be another journey, and I'm okay with that.
Could be a whole other journey, which would be exciting to me.
Especially if you weren't limited by the physical world. Yeah. I could be cool with that.
Yeah. Or we become part of some collective consciousness, feeding the rest of the people who are still alive.
Either way. Feeding the rest of...
Yeah.
And that would be trippy.
What if that's
what if we're doing this right now?
Yeah, what if that's what the collective consciousness stream is?
It's just
above the node that we're tapped into of our own consciousness.
Talking about the main wire of the Christmas lights.
Yeah, the main wire that connects us all. What if that's just, everyone who's passed combined into one general consciousness stream?
I guess we'll know when we go to next phase.
Yeah.
I'm not scared of it. Oh,
but we're going to have to wrap up on that note. The baby is awake now, so I hope you guys enjoyed our random conversation.
I loved it. Hope you did too.
Thank you, everybody, for listening. We like to end every episode off with a positive news story.
This week's news story comes to us from The Sun, and it's about Dr. Peter Scott Morgan, a man who has been diagnosed with motor neuron disease. It's a disease that wastes you away, like Dr. Stephen Hawking recently passed away from, and he wants to become the world's first cyborg and beat this in a way that no one has ever done.
So make sure you check out that fascinating news article, and make sure you like and subscribe to this video. It really helps support the channel. Also, don't forget to follow us on social media. Soon we'll be announcing when we upload to iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and others. Thank you.